Got a great film to play, just
Hello?
Have you ever snubbed a lady?
We had a technical problem.
Are we on?
Yeah, we're on there.
Can I swear? Shit!
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to Crunch and Roll. Tales from the dysfunctional world of radio told by the people who've been there, done that, and starts every conversation in real life with a time check. It's 12:45. I'm John Fox, and in a former life, I spent 2 decades presenting breakfast shows in some of England's most beautiful cities: Hull, Stoke, Reading, and Birmingham. Now, I hung up my headphones a couple of years ago, but love getting my fix of the industry that I still love, chatting to some amazing characters on this podcast. Now, have we ever had a guest that has worked at radio stations from Capital Disney to Red Tube Radio? I had no idea what Red Tube was either. And on the way, worked at some of the UK's biggest stations, from Capital to Galaxy, Absolute to Power FM. Even my beloved Viking FM, where our paths first crossed, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, I didn't really get his type of radio at the time. Now, you'll find a running theme through the 2 episodes I spend chatting to Allan Lake: being sacked. As he says early on in our chat, he struggles with finding the line and has often strayed quite a long way over it. Turns out there's a reason for this, which he openly chats about with me. Also in this episode, the first of another 2-parter, we talk about taking the radio station off air on his first ever presenter shift, being hidden from the group PD whilst being on air 6 nights a week, and how persistence got him that gig on the big 95.8. Now, before we start, just our regular reminder that if you enjoy the podcast and you are a listener to this, then we are always grateful for any support you can give us on Ko-fi. Just go to ko-fi.com/crunchandroll. And thank you to our latest backers, Mike Peters, who does incredible impressions, who loved our recent chat with Ian Camfield, Stacey Harris, who correctly states this is the best podcast in the history of the world. Thank you both and all for your support. Now, let's crunch and roll.
Oh, yeah.
Alan, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. We've been trying to get you on Crunch and Roll for at least 3 years, and you've said no several times. So
No, I didn't actually say no. I just ignored the request. I don't have the balls to say no.
Why have you been ignoring us, Alan?
Well, you know what? I get quite nervous about stuff like this.
Why?
I don't know. I always have. As soon as we start talking, I feel fine. But, I don't know. And I've got quite a lot to say as well. And I just thought, I don't know. When the right time comes, the right time will come. And the right time has come.
It's here. It has landed.
Yes.
A couple of things about you, just to kick off. You and I share the same birthday.
We do, yeah.
Which was a connection when we first met.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were winding me up.
No.
You actually do. Right,
yeah,
nice.
actually do, yeah. I never knew this, but you're from the Isle of Wight.
I am from the Isle of Wight. Bembridge, right on the east side. Lovely place.
Tell me about the Isle of Wight, because what radio stations were you listening to?
The main station would be Isle of Wight Radio, which I went on to work at, and Power FM. And that was pretty much it. There's a few other around, Ocean FM, and I don't think even Wave 105 was on when I first kind of not got into radio, but got excited about radio. But yeah, I used to listen because I've always been a really poor sleeper, right? So I used to have this little Sony Walkman, and I'd be in my bedroom and I'd be listening, right, to these late night radio shows. Late Night Love was always a big one on Isle of Wight Radio. It's great, that. Listening to people and their sad lives, entertaining when you're like 11 years old. And various other people overnight on Power. And I just used to love it, that someone will be talking in a room and who knows who's listening. It's great. Brilliant. Please
don't be offended by this, but your style of radio, which I'm going to be honest, when I first heard you at Viking, I didn't get it. I was shocked and I didn't get it. It was shocking to me because I'd not heard anything like that at that point. But we'll get onto that in a bit. Your style of radio, of course, was different to others. was that the thing in your head? You were thinking, I love radio, but I don't want to be like everybody else.
Kind of, but I think the main thing was I'm crap at doing the jock stuff. I've always been terrible at doing the jockey stuff.
Okay.
Like, ironically, I've never done a crunching roll, well, a successful one in my whole entire life. When I first started, I had a slight stutter, and my words still come out the wrong way now. And I thought, well, the only way I'm going to be able to do radio is just to talk like an actual human being. But when I say an actual human being, one that's a bit on the racy side and doesn't always think about what he says, and yeah, it served me well in some ways, and in others, completely not.
So, talk to me about getting onto Isle of Wight radio, because that was your first start, wasn't it?
Yeah, I like I say, used to listen to the radio station, and I really wanted to get down there and do some sort of work experience, but I wasn't doing work experience at school yet, so I had to go about it myself. So I sent a letter. That's right, a letter. Must have been 1997 or something like that. And I said to the program controller, I'd like to, come down and see how it works. And he called me up. And this is Stuart McGinley, right? Great guy. And he hosted the breakfast show at the time. And he called me up whilst he was on air. And I had him on in the kitchen. And he called me in the living room, right? Asked to speak to Alan. And I was on the phone going, because he was a celebrity. And he said, do you want to come down on a Saturday afternoon and help with the sports show? I know nothing about sports, but I went down anyway. And that was it, really. Sitting in their news studio on a Saturday afternoon, listening to sports reports coming down IRN and recording them onto carts. Oh, I thought I was chocolate, mate. I really did.
So at what point did you start to get on air? Can you remember that time?
Yeah, that took a while.
Okay.
It took a long while, probably like 2-3 years. I used to do the sports show, and then I would go into the spare studio, like after the sports show had gone out at 7:00. And on a Saturday evening, I would record a radio show, and I'd just do it as a radio show with all the CDs and everything, right, and all the jingles. And I'd record it onto tape. And then every couple of weeks, I'd make a demo, give it to the program controller. And it was like, no, not yet. No, not yet. And it was a constant, no, not yet. But eventually, Andy Shire, who was in charge of the place. Well, actually, no, that's not quite true. I did my first show for Stuart McGinley. He was the program controller, like I said. And he had an issue on a Friday night. Someone had said, I can't turn up, right? I can't do the show. And they were like, oh, this is half an hour before. So he said to me, do you want to do a show? And this was the best thing ever. But I was so scared.
Yeah.
Even more nervous than I was coming on here. I was petrified, mate. I really was. So I went into the studio, and I was on at 10. And I got in there about 9:00, I think, because there's some sort of network show going on.
Yeah.
And I was sat there, and we had the old Alice. I don't know if you've used an Alice Air 2000 desk, right?
No.
Right, I'm a bit of a gig, as you can tell.
I'm going to be honest with you, Alan. Maybe I have, but I wouldn't know because I'm not as much of an anorak as you.
Right, so they have these buttons in the top right-hand corner, right, that says on air, offer, and then something else, right? So you can change what studio's on the air. Now, they never use these because they only had one on-air studio. But I was all shaky and just, moving around. And I went to get a piece of paper and I hit the offer button, right? And I didn't know I'd done that. And it took the radio station off air, even before I went on. So we're on backup take. And I have to call Stuart McGinley and say, I've taken the radio station off air. And he's like, you're not even on air yet. So we had to get an engineer out. And I was so, I was flapping like a bird. And he was like, right, don't go on at 10 now. Because this is like, maybe 10 past. Go on at 11, go and have a cup of tea, go and calm down. And just go from 11, all right? And all I had to do was read the weather, really. And a gig guide, he said, keep it simple. And once again, I thought I was chocolate. I seriously did that show. And I was like, you've got to get me on air full time now. But it's still, after that, took a while, took a few months before I managed to convince Andy Shire to give me the overnight show during the school holidays, I think it was. I was at college at the time, but I used to go in there and do the show from midnight till 6 a.m, I think. It was a very long show, but I thought it was brilliant. I finally got my dream, being on Isle of Wight radio.
And was the style that you've got, what was it like back then? Were you crafting it then, or were you trying to jock it like we all did? How were you on air at that point?
I think I started to try and jock it. And then I realised I wasn't very good at doing the jock stuff. I just wasn't. So then I started talking about real life stuff. And my idol at the time was Alex Dyke, right? Who did the mid-morning, early afternoon show there. And he was a renegade. He was really out there, right? And before I even got to Isle of Wight Radio, my mum and dad used to listen to him do a phone-in show every lunchtime. And I just thought he was the biggest celebrity in the world to me at the time. He really was. So I took a lot of inspiration from him and his way of doing things, which was basically the way that he wanted to do it and not how radio wanted it to happen, the way Alex wanted to do it. All the funny bits he used to play on the air and all the phone calls. He was a bit rude to the callers. And, he made people laugh, but he was Marmite. And I didn't mind being Marmite because I like Marmite.
How many years did you spend at Isle of Wight before? Because obviously, you went on to a big station after here.
I think I was there for about 4 years.
Okay. And how did you make the big move to Power FM?
Well, I was basically kicked out, let's say.
Okay.
Let me tell you, right?
Forgive me, Alan. Am I right? Please correct me if I'm wrong, but have you been sacked from every station you've worked at?
Pretty much, I think so, yeah.
Legend.
I think so, yeah. I'm trying to think of one that I wasn't sacked from. And I just thought of one and then realised I own it, so it doesn't really count. I've pretty worked that out over the course of this interview today. I'm going to find a station I wasn't sacked from.
That's great, yeah. Well,
Stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, a great teaser, Alan. You've not lost it. So how did you get binned from Isle of Wight then?
So I was doing a Saturday evening show, and at that point, I'd been doing it a couple of years, and I was really pushing the boundaries, right? And occasionally, Andy Shire, who was in charge at the time, would say, "Oh, we heard you do this on a Saturday night. I thought it's really good." But other stuff, he'd be like, "Oh, no, don't do that." And I think I did a feature, right, called Bin Laden Reads the Bible, right? So this was about 6 months after 9/11, right?
Wow. Okay.
And the idea at the time, this is like 18-year-old me, is obviously the terrible stuff's just happened. So I'm going to bring some peace to the world by having Bin Laden read the Bible. And it was just me, slowed down, reading clips from the Bible. And he didn't fire me for that. I did not get fired for that.
Oh, fair play. Yeah.
No, I got fired for saying this line, right? The phone lines are as open as Jordan's legs. Katie Price. And it wasn't really a fight. He didn't have the heart to properly fire me. And also I was doing a load of work at the radio station as well. So it was a kind of like, we're just taking you off air. So you can do all the other rubbish stuff, but we're taking you off the air. So I think I kind of stormed out, like, if I'm not going to be on the air, I'm not doing any of it. So yeah, I was without a job. And it was really sad for me because, like I say, I've always wanted to work at that radio station.
So how did you get the gig at Power then?
Lots of demo tapes over the course of many years. I was sending tapes whilst I was at Isle of Wight Radio. And there was a guy called Mark Sadler who ran the place. And they had this slot on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, I guess, between 12 and 2. And they had tried out people before in that slot. I think John Holmes, could be wrong. He was on Power FM. I think they may have put him on that slot at some point and then moved him to Sunday evening. So they had tried out personalities in that slot. So eventually he caved and let me come do that show. And it was really good fun. It was different to Isle of Wight Radio because it was like 1 o'clock in the morning and the phones would just ring off the hook. You know what it used to be like? Not anymore, but phones would just ring and ring and ring and ring and ring. And I just love the idea of bashing through the phone lines and speaking to random people. And it was brilliant. I really liked it.
Power was, I say this every time, whenever somebody comes on Crunch and Roll and they've spent some time at Power, it was a great station, wasn't it?
It was a really good station, yeah. I think a lot of people wanted to work there.
Yeah, me. I did. I wanted to.
Yeah. It was slick. There were some brilliant people on there. The breakfast show, Mike Toolan did it to begin with, I think. And, well, not to begin with, but when I was a kid. And then Rick Jackson, who, I don't know where he's now, but I know he was at Wave. He did Rick's Rude Awakening, and it was a brilliant show. It was genius. I loved it. They used to do just, funny bits and wind-ups and that kind of thing. And, it was a great radio station. For something that, just broadcast to the South Coast, it really could have been national or something like that, because it was so different to the other stuff around.
Fired or not fired from Power FM?
Fired.
Fired, okay.
For no particular reason than it was a case of there was a new program director coming in, and it was a simple case of he doesn't want to home talent in or, make new personalities in the middle of the night. So get on your bike, basically. And I did.
So, because the next move is to Viking, where, of course, I meet you at Viking, my hometown station.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go from Power FM to Viking?
I didn't work for like 6 months, maybe. And I was sending demos. It was CDs then. We'd progressed from tapes to CDs. And I was sending CDs to everywhere, right? Literally everywhere. And I had a few people come back to me. And the guy, he was our boss, Daryl. Mm-hmm. He actually got back to me and was like, come and have a chat. And I lived on the Isle of Wight, mate.
Yeah.
That's quite far away from Hull.
I was thinking, did you even know where Hull was?
I didn't really. I didn't even know. I don't know. I still don't know where it is now, really. And I lived there for, 4 years. I knew it was a big deal. It was a big radio station. And I was really happy to go up there and have a chinwag. And he explained to me that we got the Late Show, which you hosted, right, at some point?
Yes, I did. But I did the Late Night Love Affair. Very different to you.
We think we did have a bit of a love hour, but we binned that off after a while, mate. I can imagine. Dedications. Be soppy stuff like, can you say hello to my wife, who I love so much? I'd be like, get a room. Do you know what I mean? Get a room. I was told that I'd be given a trial, and this trial went on forever, Daryl Woodman. This went on forever, literally. Months and months and months, Foxy. Months. It was a case of, am I here next week? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we like what you do. But yeah, we're still trying to work things out. Still have no idea what they're trying to work out, mate. Like, job or not job, innit? But eventually, after living Alan Partridge style out of an Ibis hotel for months and months and months, it was, you can have the show. It was good. I really enjoyed it. I think I really started to home in what I do on that radio station. I started there as a complete mess. I think I left as less of a mess.
Well, I mean, I mentioned at the start of this episode that for me, when I first heard you, it was something that I'd never heard before. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And I'm not going to, I think it's worth, it's been many years, and I perhaps should have said this to you a long time ago. But yeah, at the time, I was like, what is going on? This is not something I've heard. Now, interestingly, two things. Firstly, I want to apologise for feeling like that because I was wrong. And secondly, funny enough, I was talking to Simon, who produces Crunch and Roll, but who was also your producer at 96.9 Viking FM. And, we were chatting about it. And in that style of radio and your style of radio is something which I adore now. It's something which I really admire. So I don't know what I guess at the time, Viking was Viking. It was doing its thing. It was quite safe. And then suddenly you turned up. And I remember one night, and correct me, I can't remember, it was either Emmerdale or Coronation Street. You just played out the whole episode on air, and then you played the ads when Coronation Street went to adverts. Is that right?
I think it was Richard and Judy's slot.
Oh, was it
actually.
Richard and Judy? Okay,
I don't know. Like, Simon will know, but I think it was Richard and Judy, yeah.
But can you imagine for me, who was doing the jocking and was trying to do some fun stuff at breakfast, but not to the extent that you were, and to hear that, I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, first of all, thanks for apologising, but you don't need to. Also, with that was not a good piece of radio. It really was not. That was not me at my best. I don't know. I was trying to be left field, and I wanted people to tune in and be like, what the hell, you know? But there is what the hell, and there's what the hell, you know? Seriously, why are you doing this? But I've always struggled with the line and knowing where the line is. I don't know if you know this about me, but I've got bipolar, right? Okay. So that's always given me a lot of confidence when I feel like I need it on the air, but then the anxiety that comes with it, and a bunch of terrible, terrible things, but good things as well. And it would occasionally, I would make ridiculous decisions. Well, more than occasionally, but sometimes I look back at them now and I don't even know what I was thinking. There's no part of me that would think now that is entertaining, because it wasn't. But quite a few people were, what the hell is this, you know? So I guess I kind of got what I wanted, but like I say, maybe not the right kind of what the hell. But I hope I kind of redeemed myself after that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you firmly became part of the team. I'm just interested by the bipolar. So were you diagnosed then, or was this something more... Okay, so you didn't realise?
No, I was diagnosed about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So, no, I just thought I was different to everyone else and couldn't control my emotions. And like I say, anxiety was a massive thing for me. I definitely didn't know where the line is. And I took things really personally. I really did. Which is never a good thing when you do a radio show, especially when you want to stand up on a pedestal and say, look at me. And then as soon as someone online says, he's crap, that ruins your... That would ruin a lot of jocks' hour, but for me, it ruined my week.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. No, but I felt, it wouldn't be a week. As you say, it would probably be the rest of the show. But if I got a negative text, and do you know what? I'd argue to any presenter who says that one negative text doesn't knock them, because it does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It really does. And, you can't complain at the person for giving an opinion, What do you want? You're really happy with the text messages that come in and say, oh, well done, Fox, you did a really good show today. I'll have that. But one that says, oh, no, I didn't really like what you did. No, God, fuck off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not on, but we live in a strange bubble, us radio people, I think.
Yeah, we do. We certainly do. What I always thought as well when I heard you, and you had this Howard Stern type show, and then when I met you, it was two very, and this is what I've put down here, two very different characters, because in real life I felt you were quite shy, quite you kept yourself to yourself. Would you say that was the bipolar, or is that just how you are?
Looking back on it now, yeah, it was definitely partly bipolar. I mean, I've always been a shy person, and people outside of radio will look at that sometimes and be like, yeah, but how can you be shy and on the radio? But there's so many shy people that do radio shows that don't have bipolar. Do you know what I mean? So, it's not all down to that. But yeah, I really struggled with what people thought about me as well. Yeah. I used to build up these things in my head that if someone didn't talk to me, they hated me and I needed to avoid them and all this. I was convinced that you and your co-host Tom hated me for a long, long while, mate. For a long, long while. But I know that's not true now.
No.
What's the hate? I mean, come on.
Absolutely not. Is it true that Daryl, who I don't know what your opinion of Daryl, mine was that I thought he was a great boss.
Uh-huh.
Is it true that he used to hide you from Mark Story, of course, for people that don't know, as the group program director?
Yeah. He trying to hide someone when they do a radio show is, I mean, not one of Daryl's brightest moments. But yeah, do you know what? To his credit, he was a great boss, and he kept me there for as long as he possibly could. I know he did. But he wanted me to do what I did. I mean, he didn't want me to take it as far as I did, but he definitely wanted some personality. But I think the common consensus amongst management was we don't need London to know about this, right? Especially as it's forming, you know? Let's just do this whilst we can, because if Mark Story or, you know, anybody else in London hears this, they're probably going to be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And probably not the good what the hell, you know? So, yeah, and he always used to say to me, Daryl would be like, we're just going to fly you under the radar. Fly you under the radar, which was a really nice way of saying we're just going to keep you secret here. We're not going to promote you or anything like that. We're just going to, there you go. Just do your thing. Just appear at 10 o'clock at night. But, you know, like I say, Daryl gave me what I think is my big break, really, because I never really had a show that was on 5-6 days a week, whatever it was, 5 days a week, and was able to do what I wanted to do. I used to have a weekend show. I mean, I did various shows on Isle of Wight Radio overnight, but, you know, I wasn't doing my kind of personality thing as much. So it really gave me that space to kind of home in the personality side of broadcasting. And you know, I wasn't forced to be some sort of slick radio DJ that I'm not, you know.
Fired or not fired from 96.9 Viking FM?
Definitely 100% fired.
Okay. I can't remember why. I can't remember.
There was no reason. It was, well, there was reason. I didn't do anything in particular. I think it was, to be honest with you, poor figures. I think more people were what the fuck than the good one. So the figures weren't going up, put it that way. And I think a lot of the audience struggled to kind of get what I was doing. It didn't help being a southerner, mate, on a, you know, northern radio station. I felt a little bit out of it, not going to lie. But yeah, I was taken to the Holiday Inn by Daryl. He bought me a pint. It was at midday, and I thought, if he's buying me a pint at midday, well, he's going to tell me something I don't want to hear. And he did. He said, look, mate, we can't do it anymore. And I think he was right in a way, because if you're going to do something like have a personality on at night, there's no point in having like beige audience figures. You want it to spike. You want it to do something. But it didn't quite get there. It just didn't get there. And, you know, I was young and took that very personally as well. The big thing for me was I had never lived anywhere but the Isle of Wight with my mum and dad. So to move up to Hull was a massive thing for me. And then all of a sudden, I was living in Hull with no job. And I didn't know what to do. Do I go back to the Isle of Wight? Do I stay here? It was not a good time. It was a really bad time, if I'm honest with you.
It was a technical problem. You heard something on air you shouldn't have done.
Oh, yeah.
Let's move on to Galaxy 102, because, I mean, I think you're right in what you said before, that Viking was definitely the platform for you to then spring on and then up and up and up. I mean, you went to some incredible radio stations after this. Galaxy 102, you did Weekend Breakfast, and you did some breakfast cover as well. Can you? How did you get the gig at Galaxy?
Again, sending out a ridiculous number of demos. But guess what, Foxy? We'd moved on by then. We were emailing MP3s to each other.
Oh, it wasn't minidisc. It was MP3s.
Oh, hang on. Yeah. No, I don't think it's minidisc. But it was definitely an MP3 to Galaxy. I needed to look cool, mate. You know, young radio station, I'm going to be sending an MP3, not a CD, you know. And I went there and I met the PD, who was an Australian guy. Vaughan Hobbs, I think Vaughan Hobbs. Do you know what? He may have been from New Zealand. He was like, yeah, I want you to come and cover some shows. I covered Drive to begin with, and I was kind of forced to do a bit of the slick stuff. And I was
going to say, I was going to ask, because obviously Galaxy wasn't well known for its personality radio, was it? To your extent. So, I mean, did you have to crunch and roll it?
I did. Although it would say Speedlink in the
of course,
in the thing, but that's a rubbish name for a podcast, isn't it? Let's be honest. I really struggled, mate. I really struggled, but I couldn't get work anywhere else. I had to do it. I'm a great believer in like the universe will point you in the right direction. So I thought, well, this has got to come good, at some point. So I was covering the drive time show. I even had to do like the What's That Noise competition and all that, which was way out of my comfort zone, So yeah, I did that, and then I covered breakfast, which was really big for me. Didn't go so well though, mate. Not really.
Why is that?
Well, it's so strange how I actually managed to stay at that radio station, because I kind of got fired.
No.
Yeah, I got fired, but then I got rehired, right?
Okay.
So I was covering for Nixie, God rest his soul, and I was working with his team, right? So his co-host and his newsreader, and it was a 2-week slot, and I don't know, I felt like I didn't really belong there. In between the songs, no one would say anything to me.
Really?
Well, no, they weren't being rude. I'm not going to put that on them, right? But I don't think we had much to say to each other. So it was a bit like an awkward date every 3 minutes for 2 weeks.
I can't even begin to imagine how awkward that must have been.
It wasn't them either. It was me as well. Like I said, with the whole anxiety and that kind of thing. And it didn't make good for a radio show, because then you've got to go on and then you've got to be like, oh, it's the morning, and all this. And you've got to try and spark some conversation. And Galaxy was different because the way it was produced was proper. It was we had things that we were going to talk about. We had different opinions that we were going to give. I mean, it wasn't written or anything like that, but we discussed it before, which is really strange for me. So I did that slot, and I kind of failed spectacularly, really, by... do you know what? This makes me feel really bad, really, really bad, right? And another one that I shouldn't have done. So at the time, Michelle McManus, right? Do you remember her from Pop Idol or something like that?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
the Scottish singer. It was midweek, I think, and it looked like she was going to be number one at the weekend, right? And I thought, it's not the type of song you play on Galaxy, so I'm going to go on and be anti it, right? And I went, we can't let that fat bitch be number one.
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm. And it's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. By the way, I'm never going to get any jobs after this interview today. That's fine. I'm never going to get another job.
Alan, I think everybody knows what you're like. Don't worry.
Yeah. So, I kind of left that show a day early, I think, and was told someone would call me if they wanted to use me again. And guess what? No one called.
Never. No.
Eventually. So I think I may have this in the right order. I'll try at least anyway. So Mike Cass, who ran Galaxy 105, the Yorkshire one, he's a really nice guy. And whilst at Viking, I was kind of like, when I thought, am I going to get booted out here? I was dipping my toe and talking to, other radio stations. And, well, he would have me in for chats. We'd have, went in there a couple of times and had a coffee. He gave me some really good advice once, mate. Let me give you this, right? He said, when sending out a demo tape, right, or CD, don't put glitter in it, because he got a CD once and a card in it, and the person thought it'd be really funny to put glitter in there, and it went everywhere, and he said, I'd never employ that person ever. I thought, well, I never thought to put glitter in a demo CD. Maybe I'm missing something. He also told me, I don't know if it was someone like Robin Banks or someone sent him a demo. Could have got that completely wrong. Sent him a demo in a bin, right? It was sellotaped to a bin at the bottom of a bin. You know, like a little waste paper bin.
Yeah.
And it had a note saying, "I saved you the trouble," which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Anyway, so I spoke to him and said, "Look, I'm obviously never going to work for Galaxy again because this has happened." And he was like, "Well, you know, you shouldn't have done it, but you know, I think you're good, and I'll have a word with people." And David Lloyd was the MD at the time, and he gave me a call because he's the MD of both Yorkshire and Manchester, and he was like, "I'll have a word with the program controller, and I'll see what we can work out." Because I was very sorry for what I said. Because the thing is, the bit I skipped out, mate, was I went to the train station the next day. I don't know where I was going after the Michelle McManus thing. And someone said, "Buy a copy of the Daily Record," right? Which was the Scottish national newspaper. I'm like, why? So I got it. I opened it up. Page 3 or 4 was in massive writing, "We can't let that fat bitch be number one."
Oh my God.
But David Lloyd had a word in someone's ear, and Vaughan Hobbs had me back, and he gave me a Sunday morning slot. So I was fired, but rehired.
Well, there we go.
Yeah. And then that was good. And I could actually do some of the personality stuff. I had to do, you know, the speed link kind of thing. But we had fun. Simon, your producer, and my old producer, he worked with me there and was on air with me. And yeah, we had some good times. It was cool. I liked it.
So Juice FM next.
I was still working at Galaxy. And I was in touch with Clive Dickens, who run it at the time. And he had me in, and you know, he talked about how he liked my style, and he first found out about me by reading an article in The Sun, because The Sun had picked up, obviously, on the Michelle McManus thing as well, and he thought it was funny, which is the first person in radio to actually think that was, you know, half decent. And he had me on covering shows, and I did Sunday nights, I think, for a little bit. And it was really fun. Liverpool's a great place to do a radio show because people are really up for having a bit of fun. Can't understand a word they're saying, mate. But I really struggled with understanding what the callers were saying. But yeah, it was really good fun. I really enjoyed it there. Yeah, good time.
I think I'm right in saying that Clive was a big fan of yours, wasn't he?
I don't know. He definitely gave me some chances, and you know, we became quite friendly, and he wasn't about shutting me up. He definitely wasn't about shutting me up. He was about letting me do my thing, but to a level where, you know, it was sustainable, and I wasn't going to lose every single gig after 5 minutes, you know, and it kind of worked for a little bit, I guess.
All right, so Galaxy 102, you're then doing weekend lates for Juice, and then I've got Capital Disney next. I remember this. So did you leave Juice and Galaxy to go to Capital Disney?
I did, but right, so I was only I wasn't full time at Juice, so you can't call it a fire-in, all right? I'm not having that.
All right, okay.
Right, it was kind of like cover up, but not. And I think the station was changing hands at some point close as well. So that was fine. I knew what that was about. So that was okay. So I was still at Galaxy 102 in Manchester. And this gig came up on Media UK at Capital Disney. Now, as you can imagine, like, why would you ever put me on Capital Disney? And I don't even know why I went for the job, but I went for it. And Will Chambers was a guy that ran it at the time, and he just gave me the gig. He gave me the gig, and I couldn't believe it. Didn't know what I was going to do with it. I had no idea, because I thought, this isn't me. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do a 4-hour radio show every night with kids, and it was kind of one of the peak shows because kids weren't available to listen, you know. At breakfast, drive maybe a little bit, but we did a lot of our stuff at the end of the day. So at 7 o'clock, I remember first starting on it thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I just went to the phones and started talking to kids. And it turned out to be one of the highlights of my career, mate. I loved it so much. And I worked out how to do the Simpsons humour, you know? So, you know, I'd say things where, because we had parents listening to it as well. Well, the parents may be like, oh, I know what you're saying, but the kids had no idea whatsoever. Yeah, it was really fun. And I got to work in the Capitol radio building, which is, you know, I think we all wanted to work in that building. And I didn't care that I was on Capital Disney. You know, I was up for doing anything at that time if it meant I could get to London. I don't know what it is, but I was like a lot of jocks. And nowadays it's not so much the same. But I really wanted to be working in London. I wanted to do a show that was either national or to a bigger audience. I think London was my calling for that. And Disney was really, really good because I got a big following on that. And I really enjoyed it. Oh my God, I just realised something. I didn't get fired from there.
Oh, well done, mate. That's amazing.
Yes. Oh, phew.
I'm quite. It's really nice to hear how the memories of Disney are so high in your memory of your career. But I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say, because of course your style was so personality led, and of course you had to tone it down so much. Was there a part of the old Allan Lake that was like kind of bursting at the seams?
Yeah, but I found other ways of getting that Allan Lake out.
Yeah,
you know. One of the things that we used to do was Will Chambers, who was the boss, was a great guy. And we kind of had this rapport where he would call up on the XD and we'd put him on the air, where he would moan about the stuff we were doing, right? But he wasn't really moaning. It was kind of like it's like a bit, you know? And I got a lot of my Allan Lake kind of anger out on calling him... I think we used to call him Chimpo Chambers. He did look a little bit like a monkey. I'm not going to lie. Monkey is definitely. Yeah, you know, I managed to do everything that I wanted to do in radio, I think, on that show still, because I realized what I actually wanted to do was make people laugh and to actually entertain, and to have people going, oh, what the hell? What the fuck is this? You know, it started to fade away, I think, at that point, a little bit. I started to think, you know, I need to start putting more effort into this and more effort into making this work for me. So, and Disney it straightened me out, mate. It really did. It was a really, really nice place to work. And anyone who worked there at the time will be saying exactly the same thing. Made some good friends there. It's good.
How long were you at Capital Disney for then?
I think 3 years, maybe. Yeah.
So I've got Capital down next. Were you doing work on Capital at the same time?
Yes. So it was great, mate, because I moved on from sending MP3s to taking CD. I went back to CDs, and I used to go upstairs after I finished, right, at 10 or 11 o'clock. I used to bring the CD and I used to put it on the program director's desk at Capital. And I did that for about 6 months straight. And then one day he came downstairs and said, do you want to cover a show? And I was so excited. It was brilliant. It was an overnight show. And I'd never done anything like that before. And yeah, it's like what you dream of, isn't it? It used to be what you dreamed of anyway, going on Capital. I wasn't so much interested. A lot of people had their sights set on the places like Radio 1, but for me, commercial radio, I always thought you could actually get away with more on commercial radio, weirdly. Yeah, it was amazing. I ended up doing a weekend show there, and they never really the program director changed, and this guy came in and he was all about speed links and all this type of thing. And I'd have a snoop with him every couple of weeks, and he would be like, you know, we need to get this shorter. At one point he said, we need to try and make your links like no more than 9 seconds long, because if you can get this thing you've said here that took a minute, I'll tell you how to say it in 9 seconds. And yeah, I was out of my comfort zone again, but not in a good way. So it had gone from having really, a lot of fun on there, taking calls, to being, you got to record your calls, you got to keep it short, and it just wasn't me. I was never really given that show full time. I was just covering it, right? But I will take this as a firing, right? Because it was a pretty weird one, right? So I had got off the train. I think I'd been up in Hull, actually. And I got off the train and went to the radio station I was meant to be on at 1 o'clock. And I got there about midnight, and the guy on reception on security said, "What are you doing here? I haven't got you on the list tonight." And I was like, "What?" Anyway, he said, "Just go in," so I went in. And then went upstairs, and the guy who was on air, I can't remember at the time, I just went, "Just saying hello." And he said, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Doing a show." And he's like, "No, you're not." And they had put someone else on that slot, right?
No.
But they hadn't told me. They hadn't told me.
God.
Afterwards, they really apologised and said, "Well, do you know what? We'll pay you for it anyway. Cheers. Thank you."
That's awful.
But it's so embarrassing as well, and that's the thing, like, with bipolar, when I felt slightly embarrassed, well, when a normal person would feel slightly embarrassed, for me, it was like the worst thing in the whole wide world, It wasn't so much about being fired, it was turning up. And these people maybe saying to people, "Oh, look, he just turned up. He didn't realise that he'd been fired. Ha, 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 ha." And that type of thing would stick in my head. And it was not good, mate. It wasn't good. But hey, they paid me for the show anyway.
I don't think that's anything to do with being bipolar. I think that would affect anybody, When I lost my gig at Signal One, I caught the mid-morning guy and my then co-host doing a demo for my show. So they'd come in early, but they'd kind of overran a little bit. I walk in, "What the fuck are you doing?" And then they were like, "Oh no, we're nothing. We're just doing something." And I was like, "You're doing a demo for the show, aren't you?" No. I was like, "I know what you're doing. Just tell me." And obviously they were incredibly embarrassed, and these many years on, I've got over it. But at the time, I was very angry with a certain program director, very angry, group program director nonetheless, very angry. It's a horrible feeling. It's horrible.
It is a horrible feeling. And I don't know if there's many industries or jobs where this type of thing would happen. If you're a salesperson, I don't know, say you're selling cars, right? And you come in one day, would you just find someone there who's sat at your desk? "Oh no, he's just sat there. It's all right. It's okay. He's nowhere else to sit. Yeah. He's selling the cars, but don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine." And then being kicked out. It doesn't happen. It really doesn't happen. Media is a really strange beast. It really is. And it can be really horrible at times. It really can be. As you know, it has its amazing times, but it also has its fairly negative times as well.
Yeah, I've got to the point in my life now, and it's been many years since I was on air, a couple of years now, that I've got over the bad times. I'm like, do you know what? Fuck it. It was bad, but I just remember the good times now. I think.
Yeah, it's a good way to be.
Yeah, but I think maybe sometimes the bad times do pop up. I'm in a completely different line of work now. I work for the police. And I was doing a presentation to a load of detectives and police officers about the department that I work in. And as this woman walked out of the auditorium, she said, "I loved you on the radio," and then walked off. And I was heartbroken. I was like, yes, I used to be on the radio. There are little things that happen and it brings it back, Yeah.
Do you know what? I got one recently. At all the stations I was on, I get people add me on Facebook. A lot of people who are now adults, who were kids that listen to me on Capital Disney. I get that quite a lot. But second to that, Viking, still, I get people. Yeah, people say, "Oh, I used to love your show on there. It was 20 years ago, or maybe more." But, that show on Viking obviously hit some people the right way. Just not everyone.
Yeah.
Is this episode hitting you the right way, we've got part 2 for you coming very soon.
Couldn't get the cow into the building. It was too wide. We asked him to ask Dirty Den what it felt like to be a murderer. Can we talk porn before we talk about Fire Radio? It went on to me having a complete and utter mental breakdown over it.
Subscribe or follow us now on your podcast app of choice and get part 2 as soon as it drops.
Oh, yeah.